Most people think homelessness looks dramatic, sleeping under a bridge, begging on a sidewalk, or pushing everything you own through the city in a shopping cart. But sometimes, it looks much quieter than that. Sometimes, it looks like a 20-year-old standing in front of a locked apartment door with a backpack on his shoulder, trying to stay calm because he does not want the neighbors to see how close he is to breaking down. His name was Noah, and in that moment, Noah did not feel like someone at the beginning of a success story. He felt like someone who had reached the end of his. He had been behind on rent for 2 months, not because he refused to work, and not because he was waiting for someone to save him. He worked whenever someone gave him a shift. He washed dishes, cleaned floors, carried boxes, took late hours, early hours, and the ugly jobs other people tried to avoid. But the money never stayed long enough. One late payment turned into two turned into a warning, and one Thursday afternoon, his landlord finally told him he had to leave. There was no dramatic argument in the hallway, only a tired man saying he could not carry the situation anymore. Noah looked past him into the room that used to be his. The mattress on the floor, the small desk, the hoodie hanging over the chair, and the notebook where he used to write down plans he never had enough money to start. For a few seconds, he thought there might still be a sentence that could fix it, but there was nothing left to say. So he packed what he could carry: a few shirts, a charger, a notebook, a toothbrush, and the only shoes he owned. That night, he slept on a friend's couch. The next night, another friend said his parents did not want someone staying over again. By the third night, Noah was walking through town with his backpack, checking his phone every few minutes, even though nobody was texting him. He had $46 left. That was all. $46 between him and whatever came next. At 11:38 p.m., he found a cheap motel on the edge of town. It sat beside a gas station and a road that always sounded wet, even when it was not raining. The sign outside was missing 2 letters. The lobby smelled like old coffee. The man behind the front desk barely looked up when Noah came in. "One night?" the man asked. Noah nodded. He wanted to say 2 nights. He wanted to say a week. He wanted to sound like a normal customer. But he knew the number in his account. "1 night," he said. The man gave him a key. Room 117. The room was not nice. The carpet had stains, the lamp buzzed, and the bathroom mirror had a crack in the corner. But when Noah closed the door behind him, he stood still for a long time, because for the first time in days, there was a lock between him and the world. He sat on the bed with his backpack still on. He did not even take his shoes off. He just stared at the wall, and for 1 night, he was safe. That was enough. The next morning, he woke up before his alarm. Checkout was at 11. He had no money for another night, no real plan, and no place to go. So he walked outside and sat near the vending machine, pretending to look at his phone, so nobody would notice that he had nowhere to be. That was when he saw it. The motel had maybe 30 rooms, but the parking lot had only a few cars. 1 old sedan, 2 work vans, a pickup truck, and a small blue car near the back. Noah looked at the building. Rows of doors, rows of windows, most curtains closed, most rooms quiet. Empty. He did not think of it as a business opportunity, not then. He was not thinking like an entrepreneur. He was thinking like someone who had just paid almost all his money for a room, while 20 rooms next to him sat unused. To Noah, that felt strange, almost unfair. He was desperate for a place to sleep, and the building was full of places nobody was sleeping in. A few minutes later, a white van pulled in. 3 men stepped out wearing work boots, dirty pants, and tired faces. One of them walked into the lobby and asked the owner something. Noah could not hear every word from outside, but he saw the body language. The worker waited while the owner searched through an old notebook. Pages flipped. A pen dropped. The worker looked at his phone, shook his head, and walked back out. The van left. Noah watched it drive away. He did not know why, but it bothered him. Those men needed rooms. The motel had rooms. And somehow, nothing happened. Later that day, Noah was still outside with his backpack when the owner stepped out to smoke. He looked at Noah and asked if he had already checked out. Noah nodded. The owner looked at the backpack, then at Noah, and for a moment they both understood the truth without saying it out loud. Noah was not waiting for a ride. He was not killing time. He had nowhere to go. "You got family?" the owner asked. "Not close," Noah said. "Job?" "Sometimes." The owner nodded like he had heard that answer before. Then Noah asked the question that changed everything. "Why did those workers leave?" The owner turned his head. "What?" "The guys in the van. They needed rooms, right?" The owner shrugged. "They always say they need rooms. Then they ask 10 questions and leave." Noah looked at the motel. "But you had rooms." The owner laughed a little, not because it was funny, but because he was too tired to explain the same problem again. "Kid, I always have rooms." That sentence stayed in Noah's head. I always have rooms. For a young man with nowhere to sleep, it sounded impossible. Noah should have left. He should have walked to the bus stop, spent the day looking for another couch, and tried to survive another night. But instead, he said something that surprised even him. "I can help." The owner looked at him. With what? Noah did not have a professional answer. He did not know how to run a motel, how bookings worked, or how real estate made money. He only knew what he had seen. "I can answer the phone, write things down, call people back." The owner stared at him. "You want a job?" Noah swallowed. "I want a room." The owner did not answer right away. He looked back at the motel, at the empty doors, at the office, and at the cigarette burning between his fingers. "1 week," he said. "You help around here, desk, cleaning, whatever I need. You can stay in 117. Noah said yes before the man could change his mind. That was how it started. Not with a dream, not with confidence, and not with some big plan to become rich. It started because Noah had nowhere to sleep, and one tired motel owner had rooms nobody was using. The first days were awkward. Noah made mistakes constantly. He gave a guest the wrong key, forgot to tell housekeeping that one room had checked out, and answered the phone so nervously that a caller asked if he was old enough to work there. The owner got annoyed with him at least 5 times a day, but Noah kept writing things down. Every call, every question, every person who asked about weekly prices, every worker who needed several rooms, and every guest who said they might come back later. At night, he sat in room 117 and read through his notes. Not because he was trying to build a company, but because he was afraid that if he became useless, he would lose the room. So he paid attention, and slowly, he began to understand the motel better than the owner expected. People did not leave because the rooms were old. They knew the rooms were old. They were not expecting luxury. They left because nobody made things easy. Nobody clearly explained prices, nobody called back. Nobody remembered who needed what. A man would ask about 4 rooms for his crew, and by the next day nobody knew his name. A woman would ask if she could stay 2 weeks, and the owner would say maybe without giving a real answer. A company would call after 6, and nobody would pick up. Again and again, people came close to booking, then disappeared. And every time they disappeared, Noah saw himself in them. Not because he had money to spend, but because he knew what it felt like when nobody made space for you. One afternoon, a contractor called. He needed rooms for 6 workers starting Monday. The owner was outside fixing something near the laundry room, so Noah answered. His hand shook while he held the phone, but this time he did not panic. He asked the questions he had written in his notebook. How many people? How many nights? Did they need parking? Did they need separate beds? Would the company pay? Did they need receipts? The man on the phone paused, then said, "You're the first person who actually asked." That sentence gave Noah more confidence than any compliment ever had. He wrote everything down, found the owner, and explained the booking. The owner did not believe it at first. "He'll cancel," the owner said. "Maybe," Noah said, "but we should call him back and confirm." The owner waved him off, but Noah did it anyway. He called, confirmed, wrote the details again, and called once more the next morning. On Monday, 2 vans pulled into the parking lot. 6 workers stepped out. They stayed for 3 weeks. For the owner, it was a good booking. For Noah, it was something else. It was proof that he was not invisible. He had noticed something, he had helped, and because of that, people slept in rooms that would have stayed empty. That night, the owner brought him a plate of food from a diner down the road and placed it on the desk without making a speech. A burger, fries, and a soda. Nothing sewed. But for Noah, it felt like the first real meal he had earned in a long time. The motel did not change overnight. The sign still flickered. The carpet still smelled old. Some guests were rude. Some rooms had problems. And the owner still got angry too quickly. But little by little, the place felt less dead. Noah made a board behind the front desk. Rooms open, rooms taken, people to call back, companies to follow up with, and problems to fix. It looked childish, with colored tape, bad handwriting, and a marker that barely worked. But it helped. People stopped getting forgotten. Calls got returned. Guests who wanted to stay longer were asked before they left. Workers came back because someone remembered their names. And for the first time in years, the motel parking lot looked alive. A few months earlier, Noah had been afraid to be seen. Now people asked for him at the desk. Is Noah there? The kid from last time? He helped us book the rooms. He still hated being called kid, but secretly, he liked that they remembered him. One evening, the owner sat with him in the office after closing. He looked tired, but different, as if the building had stopped pressing so hard on his shoulders. He opened the notebook where he kept the motel numbers and turned it toward Noah. This month was better, he said. Noah looked at the page. He did not understand everything, but he understood enough. More rooms filled, more people staying longer, and more money coming in. The owner tapped the notebook and said, "You did that." Noah did not know what to say. Nobody had said that to him in a long time. Not like that. You did that. Not you messed up. Not you are behind. Not you need to leave. You did that. For the first time, Noah let himself imagine a future that lasted longer than 1 week. He asked the owner if he could be paid for the extra bookings he brought in. The owner laughed at first, not cruelly, but because the idea sounded too big for the little office they were sitting in. Noah was still scared. He was still broke. He was still sleeping in a motel room that only existed because the owner allowed it. But now he had something he did not have before: proof. So the owner agreed to give him a small cut when he brought in longer stays. The first time Noah earned money that way, it was only a few $100s, but he stared at it like it was a miracle. Not because it made him rich, because it did not. It mattered because it was the first money that came from something he had seen before anyone else cared. That changed him, not all at once, but enough. He began visiting other small motels on his days off. Not fancy hotels, not big chains, just places like the one that had saved him. Old signs, empty parking lots, tired owners, and rooms that should have been filled but were not. Most people ignored him. Some laughed. Some looked at his hoodie and backpack and decided before he spoke that he had nothing useful to say. One owner told him, "You look like you need a job more than I need help." Noah went home that night embarrassed. He sat on the edge of the bed in room 117 and thought about quitting. Then a guest knocked on the office door. A man from one of the work crews. He needed 2 more rooms for next week, and he asked for Noah by name. That was enough to keep going. Over the next year, Noah helped 2 more small properties, then 3, then 5. He was not rich. He still lived simply, still took the bus, and still saved every dollar like it might be the last one. But he was no longer just surviving. He had become useful in a way people could measure. Owners called him when rooms sat empty. Workers called him when they needed a place to stay. Small companies called him because he actually picked up. And slowly, the boy who once had nowhere to sleep became the person people called when they needed rooms filled. But the story was not clean. One owner refused to pay him after Noah helped fill several rooms. Another blamed him for a guest who caused damage. One winter, 3 long-term guests left in the same week, and Noah thought everything was falling apart again. Every time something went wrong, the old fear came back. The fear of losing the room, The fear of being one mistake away from the street, and the fear that maybe all of this was temporary. But Noah had changed. Before, fear made him freeze. Now, fear made him write things down. He started making simple agreements. He kept records. He saved money. He stopped working with owners who lied. He learned which people were tired and which people were dangerous. There is a difference. Tired people can be helped. Dangerous people will use you until there is nothing left. That lesson cost him months, but he learned it. By the time Noah was 24, he no longer lived in room 117. He had a small apartment, nothing impressive, an old kitchen, thin walls, and a neighbor who played music too loudly. But it was his. The first night he moved in, he placed his backpack in the closet and closed the door. Then he opened it again, just to look. The backpack was not beside the bed anymore. He did not need to be ready to leave. That was the first time he cried. Not when he lost the room years earlier. Not when he got rejected, and not when people laughed at him. He cried when he realized he could finally unpack. A few years later, one of the motel owners called him about a small apartment building. 12 units, old, not beautiful, a little neglected, and several rooms empty. The owner wanted out. Most people saw problems. Noah saw something familiar. He walked through the building slowly. One unit smelled like dust. Another had broken blinds. One room had sunlight coming through a dirty window. He stood there for a moment and remembered room 117, the buzzing lamp, the cracked mirror, and the feeling of closing a door and being safe. He did not buy the building because he wanted to look rich, at least not at first. He bought it because he understood places like that. He understood what they were when people stopped caring, and he understood what they could become when someone paid attention. The deal was terrifying. He used almost everything he had saved, asked for help, made mistakes, and barely slept the week before signing. When the papers were finally done, there was no celebration. Noah simply sat in his car outside the building, holding the keys and breathing like he had just finished running. The first months were rough. A pipe broke. One tenant left angry. Repairs cost more than expected, and there were nights when Noah sat at the kitchen table with bills spread out in front of him, wondering if he had destroyed everything he built. But he kept going back to the same thing. Empty rooms, people who needed somewhere to stay, owners who had stopped caring, and places that were not broken forever, only forgotten for too long. He fixed one room, then another. He answered faster, he listened better, he treated cheap housing like it still mattered, because to him it did. And people noticed, not everyone, but enough. The building filled, then stabilized, then gave him enough confidence to try again. Years passed. One property became two, and two became more. Noah did not become rich quickly. It did not happen in one viral year or one perfect deal. It happened slowly, through bad plumbing, awkward phone calls, long nights, ugly carpets, difficult tenants, small wins, and mistakes that almost broke him. It happened because he kept believing that empty places could become useful again. When Noah's net worth eventually crossed 1 million, he did not feel like the person people imagine when they hear the word millionaire. He was not loud. He did not suddenly become someone else. He still wore the same kind of hoodie, still checked locks twice, still hated wasting food, and still noticed empty rooms everywhere he went. But one thing had changed. He no longer felt like his life could be taken away by one person's decision. That was the real wealth. Not the number, not the buildings, and not the title. The real wealth was knowing he could survive a door closing, because once, a door had closed on him, and later another door opened. Room 117, a cheap motel room with bad carpet, a buzzing lamp, and a lock that worked. That room did not make Noah rich, but it gave him one night. And one night gave him enough time to notice the empty rooms. The empty rooms gave him a job. The job gave him proof. The proof gave him confidence. and confidence, built slowly over years, gave him a life he once could not even picture. So when people asked how he went from homeless to millionaire, they expected a secret, a trick, a big risk, or some genius idea. But Noah always gave the same answer. I noticed what everyone else had stopped seeing. And maybe that is why the story matters. Because sometimes the thing that changes your life does not look impressive at first. Sometimes it is an old building, a tired owner, a missed phone call, or a room nobody booked. Sometimes it is the place you land when you have nowhere else to go. And if you pay attention closely enough, the same place that shows you how far you have fallen can also show you the first way back up. Disclaimer: this story is fictionalized for entertainment and educational purposes. It is not financial advice. Real estate and business ownership involve risk, debt, legal responsibilities, and possible losses. Always do your own research before making financial decisions.